Okay, today we are going to continue on with our study of the book of Deuteronomy or Deuteronomy. If you have your Bibles, if you will turn them to Deuteronomy or Deuteronomy chapter 13, I will begin by reading verse 1. Everything I am commanding you, you are to take care to do. Do not add to it or subtract from it. In Deuteronomy or Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 1, Moses encourages the Israelite people to worship only Yahweh, the one true God. Resist the practices of those who dwell in Canaan and obey the teachings of the Lord, neither taking away from his instructions to weaken his words or adding to his commands to place unnecessary burdens upon the people. So as we begin to look at Devarim or Deuteronomy chapter 13, we see here that Moses is addressing the people who have assembled before him. And that again, he says to them, everything I am commanding you, take care to do. So what is it that Moses has been commanding the people? Firstly, he has been commanding the people to love Yahweh, the one true God, and give their allegiance only to him. Secondly, he is telling them that when you go in and you possess the land, you are not to have anything to do with the pagan deities that have been worshipped by the people who are living there. Have nothing to do with these pagan gods, and do not engage in the vile and sinful practices of the people who have been dwelling there. Thirdly, he's telling them to obey the decrees and the commands of the Lord. Everything that I am commanding you from the Lord, be sure and do. So Moses has been teaching the people Torah. He has been teaching them God's decrees, commands, laws, and ordinances. Everything that he speaks in their hearing, they are to listen, and they are to obey, and they are to walk uprightly before the Lord. And that we are told here, he says, do not add to it or subtract from it. What is he saying here? Everything that God says is perfect. Therefore, it does not need to be corrected or amended. So therefore, everything that God says, everything that God has told me to reveal to you, to follow it out. Do not take away from it, because it has the effect of weakening what God is telling you. If you add to it, you are adding undue burdens upon the people, commanding them to do things which God did not command them to do. Now, in verses 2 through 12, Moses presents cases where an individual may seek to lead his fellow Israelites astray into worshiping the gods of others or serving them in addition to the Lord. If there is one who comes to them proclaiming to have a message or a word of knowledge, and to authenticate their claim, they give the people a sign or a portent, and it comes to pass, yet they seek to lead the people astray, to follow after gods which they have not known and their fathers did not fear. The people must not heed the words of this false prophet. So we're going to see in verses 2 through 12 that he is going to reveal to the people that there are going to be those that will come as a false prophet, or there might even be someone in your own house or a close friend that will try to lead you astray, lead you away from following God, or serve another God in addition to the Lord. And so again, he starts off by talking about this false prophet, one who is going to come to you. And he's going to come to you, and he's going to say to you that I have a message or a word of knowledge for you, that I am a true prophet. And then he will seek to authenticate this claim by giving them a sign or a portent. And that if he gives them a sign and a portent and it comes true, but yet this person says, let's turn away from serving Yahweh, the one true God. Let's turn away from him, and worship the gods of others, gods which we have not known of, or gods that your fathers did not fear. If this comes to pass, you are not to heed their words. They are a false prophet. Now, let me give you an example here of a true prophet. And it comes from the example of Moses. Remember that Moses fled from Egypt to live in the land of Midian. And God comes to him and he says, I want you to return to Egypt. And I want you to go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. And that before this, you are to go to the elders of Israel and say, the God of your fathers is going to bring you forth from the land of Egypt. And that God gives him two signs that will show the people that he is a prophet. It will authenticate his claim that he is coming to them on behalf of the Lord. The first is he will cast his staff on the ground and it will become a serpent. Then he will pick it up by the tail and it will become a staff again. Then he will stick his hand inside his cloak, it will become leprous. Then he will put it back in and it will come back fresh and healed. So we know he goes to Egypt, he shows the elders these signs, they trust in him, and eventually he leads the people out of Egypt. But again, there are going to be false prophets that will come to them, and that they will be able to perform signs and portents. But if they try to lead the people astray, the people are not to listen. They are not to heed their words. Now, sometimes individuals are empowered by the adversary, by Satan, to perform acts to lead the people astray. As Moses states, God allows these false prophets to test these people to see what is in their heart, whether their desire is to hear and be led by his voice or be guided by signs and wonders. So this is pretty scary here. A lot of people think that Satan, the adversary, is a toothless tiger. He's anything but a toothless tiger. And in fact, what we have here is that here is one who has the power to work through individuals, through signs and through words, to deceive people and to lead them astray. Now again, Moses says that God will allow for false prophets. He will allow this to test his people to see what is in their hearts, whether they will actually listen to his voice, they will listen to his voice and be guided by his words, or whether they want to be guided by signs and wonders. And believe me, there are people even today that want to be guided by signs and wonders. They're always looking for somebody, that can do this or do that. I'm going to tell you that if there was somebody that appeared today and that they could, bring about, hail from a cloudless sky, or they could raise somebody from the dead or whatever, they would have a large following, even if they are trying to lead the people astray. So God allows these people to appear to test the hearts of the people. Are we seeking him and listening to his voice, or is our only interest signs and wonders? Now, if an individual seeks to deceive a family member or a friend into worshiping the gods of others, to learn the practices of their worship or engage in their festive occasions, their words must be ignored. So, we have a false prophet, and now we have an individual in one's own family. And Moses says, if your son, your daughter, your spouse, your closest friend comes to you and says to you, let us turn away from following Yud-Heh-Vaveh, or follow another God in addition to Yud-Heh-Vaveh, the one true God, to follow these false gods, to learn their practices and engage in their festive occasions, you are not to heed their words. You are not to listen to them, because they're seeking to lead you astray. In the case of a false prophet or seducer who happens to be a family member or friend, the individual must be reported to the authorities, the matter must be investigated, and the person held to account. So Moses says, if you have this false prophet, or you have someone in your family who, your family or your close friend who is trying to seduce you and turning away from Yudevare, the one true God, to follow after the gods of others. You are not to heed their words. You're not to listen to them, but you're to go to the authorities, and you are to tell them of this matter. They will investigate the matter, and if it is found that they be a false prophet or someone who's trying to seduce someone away from following the Lord, they are to be held to account, which means they would be taken out and they were to be stoned to death because they were trying to lead the people away from the Lord. Then he goes on in verses 13 through 17. If a town is led astray to follow the gods of others by an inhabitant or wicked individuals, it was to be reported, the matter investigated, and if it was found that the city had given itself to false worship and abominable practices, this place was to be treated as a Canaanite city. It was to be put under Karam. The inhabitants and their livestock were to be put to death, their possessions destroyed, and the city razed, never to be rebuilt. So now he's talked about the false prophet, he's talked about the seducer within a family. Now he's talking about a city that completely turns away from the Lord. Someone has come and they have convinced the people of this town to turn away from God, to give their affections to the gods of others, or follow this God in addition to Yudevave, the one true God. And that they have turned away from God and engaged in vile sin and practices, and that if this becomes the case, that it is to be reported to the authorities. They are to investigate, and if the matter is found to be true, the city is to be put under Karam. Karam means totally devoted to the Lord, which means everything is to be offered up to the Lord, destroyed, and to go up to the Lord. They were to go in, and that they were to put all the inhabitants and their livestock to the sword. All their possessions were to be put in a pile and burned. The city walls were to be pulled down, the city razed, completely destroyed, and the town was never to be rebuilt. Now, in the days of Yehoshua or Joshua, a rumor spread that the tribes on the east side of the Jordan had built an altar in opposition to the Lord. After an investigation, it was found that they were not in opposition, but indeed committed to serve the Lord. So, in the days of Yehoshua or Joshua, we know that what happened is that they went in and they conquered the land of Canaan. They conquered the promised land. And all of the tribes received their allotment. So once the land has been taken, the conquest completed, and all the tribes have received their tribal allotment, that what happens is that the tribes on the east side, which is Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they are allowed to go home. But before they reach their homes, they build an altar. And that word reaches the authorities that these 2.5 tribes have built an altar. And that they assume the worst. They assume that these tribes have turned away from God, that they are in opposition to the one true God. So they have a committee that will investigate this matter, and it is led by Phinehas. Who better to lead this investigation than Phinehas? And if we know about Phinehas, years before that he had stood up in the face of idolatry and rebellion against the Lord. And so he leads this investigative, committee, and they go to these 2.5 tribes. What is the purpose of this altar? Are you in opposition to the Lord? And they say no. We have built it to serve as a reminder that we are part of Israel. They said, no doubt your descendants will one day say that the border of the promised land is the Jordan River. That because we live on the east side of the Jordan, we have no part in Israel. That we are separate from the people of the Lord. And we just want this to serve as a reminder Now, we live on the east side of the Jordan, but we are still Israel. We are still part of God's people. And because of what they said, it was found that they were indeed people whose desire was to serve the Lord. And so they went back to their homes. Now, again, you'll find this in Joshua chapter 22, verses 10 through 34. Lastly, if the nation embraces the gods of others, filling the land with sin and abomination, and they refuse the words of the prophets to repent and return, the land will vomit them out, and their enemies will carry them off into captivity. So we've had where there is a false prophet who has come to the people trying to lead them astray. Then there's one in one's own household or close friend who has tried to lead them astray. Now we've got where the entire nation, well, I should say, I forgot to mention again that the town turned away from the Lord and was destroyed. Now we've got where if the nation turns away from the Lord, there will be accountability. And so what happens is that if the people turn away from the Lord and give their affections to the gods of others, and that they fill the land with sin and abomination, and God sends a prophet or prophets to the people, and they refuse to listen, to repent and return, that what will happen is that the land will vomit them out. God will bring their enemies against them, and they will be driven off, taken off into captivity. Now I just want to make a few more points and I'm going to close. Yeshua warns of false messiahs and prophets who will speak words to deceive. These individuals or those who come on their behalf will be so convincing that if it were possible, some of the elect might be tempted to believe their words. It is critical that believers be well versed in the Word of God so they will not be deceived by appearances or by words. So in the book of Matthew chapter 24, Yeshua is talking to the people and he's telling them not to be fooled. There will be false messiahs and false prophets that will come to you with signs, portents, and words. And that with these words they will seek to deceive and lead astray. Now, it is said that their signs and their words will be so convincing that if it were possible, some of the elect might be deceived and led astray. So they're pretty good. Now, what is being said here is that the followers of Yeshua must be well versed in this book, well versed in these words. Because again, if we are not well versed in this book, it is possible for us to be led astray. Now, he gives us some examples. He says if somebody says that the Messiah has appeared in the wilderness, don't believe them. Or if he's hidden in an upper room, don't believe them. Then we're told later on what to look for. He will come suddenly with a shout and a blast of a shofar. So again, we know that he's going to come with a shout and the blast of the shofar. He's going to come on the clouds of heaven. So if somebody says the Messiah is in the wilderness or hidden in an inner room, if we know this word, we'll say that is not true. That is a false Messiah. So we have got to be well versed in this word so that we are not deceived by appearances or by words. Now, Shaul or Paul warns of the man of perdition who is empowered by Satan to perform signs and wonders that will deceive many. So in his second letter to the Thessalonians, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 8 through 12, that Shaul or Paul is warning the people about the man of perdition who is the anti-Messiah or the Antichrist, that he is empowered by Satan. Satan empowers him to come with signs and wonders, with words that will deceive many. We're told later that either he or his spokesperson can call down fire from the sky. Another thing is that the anti-Messiah, the Antichrist, will have the statue that is built, and that it will be said to that statue to speak, and that the statue will speak. So by calling down fire from heaven, and by causing the statue to speak, many people will believe in him, and they will be led astray. So we have got to, again, not allow ourselves to be deceived by appearances or by words. Now, supported by the political power of the anti-Messiah and the kingdoms of the earth, the wicked religious system of the time, and those who come forth from her, shall cause those who oppose her to be persecuted as heretics. Eventually, the beast, after consolidating his power, will bring an end to this apostate religion and stand in open opposition to God and his true servants. So we learn from Revelation chapter 17 that there is going to be a false religion, a world religion. It says about the harlot, the great whore that rides the beast. What this is that the great harlot or whore is a world religion. And that, again, it is a wicked world religion. Some believe that it will be a composite of the religions of the world. We'll grab a little from this, a little from this, a little from this, and work it all into a world religion. But whatever it is, they make it appear as that they are people who are speaking truth, but their words and their actions are deceptive, leading the people astray. Now, this harlot is in league with the government, who is, the leader at this time is the anti-Messiah, the Antichrist, and the kingdoms of the earth. So, because this wicked world religion is in union with the government, they are able to cause those who are the faithful servants of the Lord to be persecuted. There are going to be those who are going to be faithful servants of the Lord, and they're going to say, now wait a minute here. Your words are deceptive. You're leading the people astray. This is what God says. This is the way we are to walk. This is the way to walk in paths of righteousness. And again, because this wicked world religion is in league with the government, that these people are going to be denounced and they're going to be persecuted as heretics. And that some are going to be put in prison, some are going to be starved and beaten, others are going to be made martyrs. Now, this is going to go on for a while, where we're going to have this world religion who is in union with this, wicked world system. So you're going to have a league of the religion and the state that are going to be united. But what we know about the anti-Messiah is this is a man of pride. He's going to allow people to worship their gods and even the one true God for a while, and he's going to get sick of it. He's going to say, I want you to worship me. I want you to give your love and your allegiance only to me. So again, what is going to happen is that he and the kingdoms of the world are going to devour this apostate religion and bring it to an end. And then he's going to make war on the faithful servants of the Lord. He is going to stand in the temple and he's going to proclaim, I am God. He's going to shake his fist at the one true God, say, I have all authority, and he will resist God and seek to oppress his true servants. Therefore, believers must be steadfast and run the race to completion, trusting that the presence of God will be with them even in the darkest of circumstances. To the victor, the faithful ones of God, belongs the crown and everlasting life in the new Jerusalem. So again, as we are told, we're going to have this wicked world religion in union with the wicked world government. Eventually, the beast is going to say enough of this, and he's going to bring about an end to this apostate religion. He's going to shake his fist in the face of God, and he's going to oppose the Lord and seek to destroy his true servants. And that we must understand that we must be steadfast even unto the end, because of the fact that we know the end of the story. We have read the last page, and it is that evil will have its time. Evil will have its time, and the faithful of the Lord will be persecuted. But we must be steadfast, and we must encourage one another to be steadfast. I encourage you to be steadfast. You encourage me to be steadfast, and we run the race. And that we must know that even in the darkest of circumstances, God has promised that His presence and the presence of His Son Yeshua will be with us. When we are sitting in jail, if that's required of us to sit in jail, know that God's presence and the presence of Yeshua is with us. If we undergo persecution, we know that God's presence and the presence of Yeshua is with us. And that if we are called to martyrdom, it sounds like a fearful thing to be called to martyrdom, but know that as we are facing martyrdom, know that God and His Son Yeshua, their presence, will be with us even unto the end. So remain steadfast and run the race to completion, because we know that the victor receives the crown. We are told this in Yaakov, or James. James writes in James chapter 1 verse 12 that to the victor receives the crown. Now we're not talking about a gold kingly crown, but what we're talking about here is the crown that they would give to a victor in a race or someone who received favor. That it was a wreath or some kind of thing that was woven, and that they would give this to the winner of a race or to someone who had received favor. So if we love God, if we're in covenant relationship with Him through the finished work of Yeshua, and we remain steadfast and we run the race to completion, we have it promised to us that we will receive the crown, which is the crown of life. And that with that crown of life, that we have access to the new Jerusalem. In this great city, God will rest His presence. And that those who have access to the city, they will walk in the presence of their God by the light of the risen Lamb, and that they will experience life, joy, and peace for all eternity. So again, as Moses warned the people, let me warn you. False messiahs, false teachers, even loved ones might seek to come and lead you astray. But do not listen to their words. Have this book in your mind and on your heart, so that we know the truth and we will not be led astray by appearances or by deceptive words. And that when trouble comes, not if, but when it comes, that we will run the race and we will run it faithfully to the end, that we might receive the crown of life and have life, joy, and peace in the New Jerusalem for all eternity. That's the message.